All right, it's that time of the week again where we come up with another topical issue. It is Frontline. Your regular host is Ogochukwu Kaona, and a warm welcome to you. All right, we are continuing from our last discussion on artifacts and the clamor for the return of the stolen artifacts to Benin and by extension Nigeria. All right, we still have Mr. Theophilus Umubai, the curator of the National Museum, Benin City, in the studio. He's also going to be talking about the moats and, of course, other national assets that we have in Benin, and, of course, the need for the conservation and preservation of those monuments. All right, sir, you're welcome once again to the program, Frontline.
Thank you very much.
All right, let's take a look at what we discussed last week, just like a recap of the place that we are now and the clamor for the return of artifacts.
Thank you very much. What we were trying to say the other time was, the summary of it is that art is not art for art's sake in Africa. Neither was it or is it in Benin. So, it was High Priest Ebon who said, and I quote, that each of those artifacts taken away in 1897 represented and still represent an ancestor in captivity. That's how the Beninese view those objects abroad. Therefore, the strident clamor that has been on now for their return can be understood from that perspective. Or the clamor is anchored on such belief, because they just see the art as mere artwork, but part and parcel of the history and art tradition of the Benin people. So that's the summary of what we were saying the last time.
All right, just when we were in the studio in the last episode, we understood the German delegation came calling. You know, they were at the palace of the Oba of Benin. Did you by any chance get information on what it was all about?
The Germans have been the ones, like we equally mentioned, who are in the forefront now, the real forefront for the return of these objects. Because the call for the return is coming from the high office of the German government, not just curators now. And ever since, they have been carrying out certain programs. You will not know this. Behind the scenes, we'll be having Zoom workshops and Zoom meetings, all geared towards the return. This is the first time it's happening. So there's this move, conscious move by the Germans to do so. So their visit to the Omonaba was a continuation of efforts to see how they can streamline and perfect every arrangement about such a return. That was why they came.
So there is a very bright light at the end of the tunnel.
Yes, very bright light.
Okay. All right, before we go to our main focus for this day, the moats and other monuments in town that are in a state of disrepair, let's talk a little on the arts gallery that is at the National Museum. What do we have there?
And the one in National Museum Benin?
Yes, Benin.
The exhibit gallery.
The exhibit gallery.
The exhibit gallery. The National Museum Benin is in Ring Road, and we have 3 floors in our gallery. On each of those floors, we try to mount an exhibition. So on the ground floor, we have an exhibition, but it's in 4 parts. Yes, we have the one that's talking about the supremacy of the Oba of Benin over other chiefs, and of course the subjects. We have something on Oba Esingi. Then we have worship, traditional worship. And of course we have the 1897 Benin pogrom, that's where I put it, that took place in 1897. So we have sections for this, little sections trying to portray our history in a nutshell. That's what that ground floor is talking about. But the first floor happens to be the one that is displaying photographs of Eso Alonge, an unsung hero, because he was there doing his thing, covering the activities of the palace, the court, from late 30s to early 80s when he passed on. So this man was able to preserve the glass place negatives and virtually all the photographs he took both at the palace, covering Oba Kenzo's activities and a little bit of Oba Ediawa. And of course, he had a studio in town, the Ideal Studio, where nobles and commoners as well went there to capture memorable moments. He has all these photographs. So you have a situation where a 16-year-old lady in the late 40s, today is in the 80s, and they are still alive. So we are expecting that when they come like that, they will be able to look at then and now. That's what that exhibition is all about. Trying to look at it through the lens of Eso Alonge, who is late now, and see how that can go on. The family negotiated with the Smithsonian National Museum of African Art, and all these holdings, photographic holdings, were bought by Smithsonian, and the exhibition took place in Washington, D.C. between 2014 and 2016, after which it was traveled to National Museum Benin because they felt that you have more people who recognize those photographs because they couldn't identify them in US. So they wanted to bring them here so that people will come and look at them. So you'll be surprised one day you come to the museum, you see a photograph of your great-grandfather who was maybe 10 years, 15, 20. That's what we have on the first floor. Then of course on the last floor, we try to use our exhibit to see how we can achieve unity in diversity, because our knowledge of museum and museology and museography has shown that you have objects that are in different ethnic groups, communities, that are not even close, yet they convey the same meaning and the same functions. You have some in like Igala, Benin, and elsewhere saying the same thing. So we felt somehow we're all interrelated. So why are we fighting? Why are we ethnocentric in our attitude and in our behavior? Why do we say we will not, or these days exogamous marriage is taking place, so we're happy about that. But in those days, somebody will say you can't marry from so place. But why do that when the museum is trying to say that there are objects that portray that they are similar? So we try to do that on the last floor, and we termed it Unity in Diversity. So 3-in-1 exhibition in an exhibit gallery just for our viewing pleasure.
So what are the people's disposition towards, especially the one at the last floor, the one portraying unity in diversity?
Oh, some of them were even surprised that you have such things existing. And not only objects in the south, you have objects in the north, trying to bear a close affinity with objects in the south. So it's not true that there is this. So what we've done with that exhibition is to blur the boundary of hate, boundary of distrust, and all that, and tell you that, look, we are one, let's not fight. People like it. They like that exhibition very well. They like Alonge too.
Yeah, it's sounding very, very interesting, especially now that we are having small fractions of, sentiments being displayed, especially in the ethnic groups. All right, let's talk about the moats now. Give us a little background.
What we call moats, it's actually what we call earthworks, technically. Earthworks is the way we call it. It comprises the moat and a wall. Surprisingly, there used to be a very high wall. A moat is a rampart, it's a pit, kind of. In Benin, we say it's iya. And it was done through manual labor. When you dig the earth, the sand that was so collected was, when anywhere, if you're even doing a foundation, you dig and pour the sand somewhere. It is that pouring that led to the wall, and the wall was crafted accordingly. It was done by Oba Ogwola in the 13th century. Of course, you know that Oba Ogwola was very intellectual and a thinking Oba who galvanized his people. Benin that time was a very expansionist in nature. It was never conquered. It was conquering territories. So he felt that because we are at war, there was need for us to protect ourselves. So he organized his people and manually they dug that moat. And that was a feat on its own. We were talking about a heritage asset that covered about 6,500 square kilometers of communal land. That if you put it in stretch, if you wrap everything up together and put it in stretch, you see that it has a border distance of about 16,500 kilometers as of that time. Now, what happened again was that, when another comes from the throne, the heir apparent is known immediately. But the brothers of the Oba, what he does, he appoints them as a digi in various communities. And when they get there, they dig their own moat too to protect themselves, and it's like transfer of technology. And make sure they connect it to the main moat. So that led to the re-expansion of the moat over the period. So in a nutshell, that's what the moat stands for. It constitutes, a heritage trail. Because it's a trail, it's not just a fixed place. It's a trail that goes around. Heritage trail of unique, distinctive, cherished aspects of the Benin civilization. That's what the moat stands for. It's a heritage trail of cherished civilization of Benin. So Oba did the first one, the inner one around the original Benin kingdom, while Oba Eware came in the 16th century to now do the outer one. That's why we have 2 rings of them, of the moats. Okay, so that was the original idea of the moat.
The ones in the 13th century, the men were so strong. There was no technology, no. They dug with their hands.
Yep, physically with their hands. Of course, in those days, there were so many other metaphysical aspects that cannot even be discussed on this program as well. So that's how the kingdom survived. And all those ones came into play too, definitely. We are talking about the moat that the depth was really deep, very deep. And the idea is to ward off enemies or their threats from Benin, because it was difficult for any enemy to climb that high wall and come down and go into the deep pit, the deep ear, and hope to come up again and enter Benin Kingdom. That was wrong. They couldn't have achieved that. Recall also that all these boats, especially the first one that was built around the Oba Palace precincts, they had 9 gates, and there was no way you could enter the entire Benin Kingdom except through these gates. But they are extinct now. But that was how he thought about it. That was how they were all fashioned, to ensure that the safety of the people was guaranteed. For that of Oba Eware, his story so well. It was befallen with the sad news of losing his own children. So he gave laws that shouldn't do these do's and don'ts, a lot of taboos. Many people wanted to fly out of Benin Kingdom, so he dug his son to prevent people from going out. So Oba was enemies from coming in. Oba Eware the first, the great Nogidigan, was the people from going out. So whatever the reasons are, we have this unique feature that even appeared in the Guinness World Record, and it's on the tentative list of UNESCO. That's how massive it is.
Okay. So over the years now, what has gone wrong? UNESCO is still finding it. I wouldn't say it's finding it difficult now. Finding the moats unworthy of becoming a world-class heritage site. What has gone wrong?
Well, they maybe not. We're here to meet the criteria.
Meet the criteria.
Yes.
Okay.
The moat is here to meet the criteria set out by UNESCO. And these criteria are simple, but at the same time complex. Simple in the sense that all they require from you is what we call OUV, outstanding universal values of the moat. The authenticity, the originality of the moat must be restored. So that is what they are looking out for. They want to find out what are you doing about it. I'll give you an example of what China did. The Great Wall of China, which we hear about everywhere. It's not as if the entire stretch of the wall, like our own boat now, which is over 16,000 kilometers when you stretch. That of China too, they don't have it like that also. But they have sections that they have managed to preserve, which visitors come and are taken to go and view and behold. So for us, over the years, we'll be having this serious problem of encroachment by humans, residents, mark my word, residents around the moat. Every resident guilty who is there. So the law, making that moat a monument, talks about nothing should be built, not a structure should be built like 50 to 100 feet from the moat. It's what we call buffer zone, should be preserved. So if UNESCO comes and we have aspects of the moat we are showing to them, And there are buildings, you know, even sharing boundary with the boats, as it is now in most cases. Some of the buildings that are over 300 million naira worth. Sometimes in some cases, the boats have been covered up. Now, mind you, when the boats were dug, they were dug for defensive purposes. But in terms of weather conditions and control, the boats serve as natural drainage and helped because of our very low table water in checking flooding. Now, the filling up of the boats, see some of the problems we are having. Imagine if these boats that I have described them, the dimensions, the depth, the height of the walls, and so on and so forth, were still intact somehow. We will be having the flooding we are having today. At Uselu,
that's the natural water.
Once rain falls, it goes in. All the government would have needed to do then would be to say how to link the final flow of that water, maybe to Ekuba River, for then it flows to other rivers all over Nigeria. And believe would have just been, you know, the rain falls, 5 minutes we are done. So the boat would have just been natural drainage. We cannot rule out erosion too that would have happened over the year, but it would have been minimal. The real problem, human element. They carve the walls to go and do filling for foundation. Human beings, yes, they do it to fill foundation. They use it as a refuse dump. Some people are staying around, they would be able to have toilets in their house. They defecate and throw it there too. So over the years, it was building up and filling up.
So who is responsible for regulation?
When a heritage asset is declared a monument, it is brought under the watch of the National Commission for Museums and Monuments. And that is why we are museums and monuments, the phrase is there. So when you say a monument, it's under our care, under our watch. But you know what? The museum does not originally or automatically become the owner of the property. No. What the museum does is to help the community to manage that particular property or heritage asset. That is why the museum deals with the stakeholders. Even before it is declared a monument, every stakeholder is called for meetings and all that before it's finally declared a monument. So what happens is that it is participatory management that is all that is called for. All hands must be on deck because only the museum cannot do it alone.
Okay, so has the museum been doing its parts in this regard?
What we have been doing, sensitizing the people about its importance, erecting signage. You still have 1 or 2 that are still there, very close to Bini Plaza, or to Motel Bini Plaza. If you are moving
close to the NUJ,
you will see it there. And we have them. We put a lot of them in the past, but some of them got destroyed by way of development and the rest. And we did that. Then Oba Oediawa actually formed a committee at a stage comprising some Benin chiefs, National Museum Benin staff, the police, and believe you me, NTA. That was they were representing the press on that committee, and their duty was to go around to monitor, assess how the boats were. That was then, and they did their job. They went around, and you will not believe that while carrying out this job, the police too, security was there. They met resistance from the people. They met resistance, serious resistance.
That was what year?
Oh, we're talking about 2 decades ago. They even at that, we're going too far.
So what has happened after?
Because the museum cannot enforce the law. The law says do this. The enforcement agents are the police, and we normally relate with them. Up to date, we still have communities that are still having issues with the boat. We have people who run to the museum to come and report. Oh, we saw somebody who is trying to do this. What we do, we send our staff there to go and look at. Sometimes the reports are not really based on genuine case. Sometimes they are based on, and when we investigate and find out, then we report to the police. That's what we can do. That's our power. But the issue of preserving the heritage assets, preserving the boats, the monument, is a concern for everybody. All of us must be there. The people must be mindful of how they relate with the boat. The idea of going there to say it belongs to all, therefore we can do anything we like with it. That was not the idea. In the 13th century, as far back as 1280 AD, Obongwola came up with this idea. So why are we spoiling it?
I was even privileged to visit 2 of the two portions, and I saw that they've been turned to refuse dump.
That is it. And you know that the National Museum of Benin powers cannot go beyond what, and there's no way the museum can cover an asset that is 16,000 kilometers. It's not possible. We don't even have the wherewithal to do it. That is why the people is key.
They must take responsibility.
All those, there's virtually any settlement or any axis in town and you don't see a boat crisscrossing it. So our human beings are staying. There are those who have not even flouted the law, who have been doubly giving that buffer zone. And they should be watchful and report when it happens, when people are trying to encroach.
Okay, so what happens to those buildings? You made mention of some that are over 300 million naira projects already occupying portions of the moats. What happens if the laws are enforced?
You're asking the public servant a question meant for those
they will be demolished.
No, but it will take real political will and conviction to do that. It is not the moat does not belong to the National Museum of Benin. It belongs to the Benin people. It belongs to Edo people. It's not. It belongs to Nigerians. Everybody. There's no monument, I repeat, that is so called, that belongs to none. We just manage and bring our technical skills. So all hands must be on deck. People should resist it. You talk about portions that bear kind of semblance to what was some little depth, biodiversity, shrubs, trees here and there. Yet some of those things, like you mentioned also, nothing stops the stakeholders from, we can identify like 8 of them in Benin today. I can go there and see how we can condone them off, preserve them. That is what is done even in China.
So it's possible.
Yes, even the one that has been filled up in Observer, you just turn your back and go and face the one. Because going there to use a bulldozer, you call it, to start excavating, open to reenact what Obaogola did, may not be the, just freeze those aspects of the boat. Make sure that the conservation is done using local materials and all that. Not throwing concrete, because UNESCO will not go for any concrete. You can go there and throw in billions now and make it one kind edifice and all that. UNESCO will go and just say no. But if we go back in time and those trees you saw, that's a tick of the box for UNESCO. They want to see the naturalness of that, originality of that. So if we can freeze those aspects, and then we can get going. I must say, commend the efforts of the President Oba of Benin, Oba His Royal Majesty, Oba Ewuaye II. He is concerned, deeply concerned, about what we have been discussing here. He called us some time ago with some chiefs and expressed, he was not happy. We show that he cares. He cares about it. And he made certain suggestions and which COVID-19 didn't allow us to really do. I'm sure when we get to
post-COVID.
Post-COVID, when we get to the bridge, we'll cross it. But I want to place on record that Oba, His Royal Majesty, Oba Ewuaye II Ogidigan, is serious about doing something about it. And he understands all these intricacies you mentioned. He does.
So it will also need a traditional approach.
Oh, traditional seriously. Government, even the present governor. He's an art lover, lover of culture too. And the Ebowa we talked about the last time is the one who is bringing everything up.
And I'm sure he's going to incorporate that into it.
Thank you very much. He's not ruling out the moat from it. Ebowa is going to be sited on Adesogbe, opposite the Oba's Palace. And you have this moat that is at this house in Adesogbe. There was a gate there in those days. That moat can still be restored. Like I said, 1, 2, 3, 4 of them here and there. Do them, put signage and all that. Visitors will come and see that, this was how the entire stretch of the boat looked like.
And it can even generate revenue for...
That's what it does. UNESCO, what the heritage sites, they generate a lot of revenue. They do. A lot of revenue. Because everybody recognizes that before UNESCO will approve it as a site, there's just something they've seen about it.
So what's your in all what we have been saying in 25 minutes? Puts succinctly now. What's your message to the people?
My message to the people is that culture, yes, is dynamic, but we can freeze aspects of our culture in time perspective, especially as it applies to the both. 1, 2. The way and manner our people view culture and our cultural heritage, we should kulu temper. Reason being that I'm a Christian and so many other people are adherents of Christianity. Do you know that many people believe that in the National Museum Benin we worship those objects, we pour libation on them? We don't. These are identity symbols of our culture that we're keeping. So our attitude towards cultural things must change. It must change. Thank God the schools are coming in droves now. And the children are saying, a school came yesterday and I asked the children because they were enthusiastic. You could see that, no, this is not something they ever dreamt of saying. But they were happy seeing them and asking me question. Is it true? Is it that?
It exists.
So in our various homes, nobody tells such stories again. The narratives have vanished. It shouldn't be, because we should know where we are coming from. Then as for the moat, certain aspects can be taken care of, just like the China wall, and still presented to the world as a symbol or semblance or something related to the original state of the moat. There's no way we can cover the entire stretch. It's difficult.
Thank you so much. Theophilus Mubai is the curator of the National Museum here in Benin City. It's always a delight having you in the studio.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you for watching. And if you don't remember anything, you just have to play your part in nation building. And of course, what we have just discussed today, the moat is a national asset that must be preserved for future references. All right. Thank you for watching. And remember, COVID-19 is still there. Get vaccinated and remain safe. Bye for now.